Welcome to my T-level health teaching guidance from one teacher to another. It's an overview. It's basically bringing the different aspects in the content, in the spec, together in order to get it delivered in time and in a way that perhaps students will understand or get an enhanced learning experience. I'm not affiliated with the NCFE. I don't mark exam papers. In fact, I've found that the NCFE website is difficult to navigate. I don't know whether you guys have. There's lots of separate documents that you need to refer to. NCFE sometimes do updates of documents. Any training that you go on, they go, we update. You'll have to download the live copy, but then you don't know which is the live copy. So when they upload something new that replaces a document, they don't actually put a date on it. So then you're not quite sure whether that is been updated. It's not clear at all. So I'm definitely not affiliated with the NCFE. But what I have done is I've looked at all those separate documents and I've looked at how it all works, and I'm bringing it together to make life a little bit easier for you. So welcome to those that are teaching for the first time this year. Some people are in the second year having a listen in. Some people starting September 24 or even September 25. It should benefit you regardless, and I hope you get something out of it. Learning objective: make the monster, the T level, the I feel really worried about it, the oh my gosh, I don't really know what I'm doing, into a cute puppy. Messy but manageable. So the learning aim really is about lessening worries, anxieties, lowering your stress. You're not alone. There are a lot of teachers in the same position as you, and no monster is too big to not conquer. No mountain's too big. You can do this. First things up then, guided learning hours. In year one, you have 495 learning hours. We were initially told that was 20 hours a week we would get, but ended up with 17 hours a week. It will be different for all different schools. In that 495 hours, you have got 2 weeks of assessment. The ESP assessment is in a 2-week window, and you'll need that whole 2-week window. So it's minus those 2 weeks of teaching. It's all hands on deck in ESP, so there's definitely no teaching because you have to supervise it, and then there's recording. In year two, there are 570 hours, so more hours. So this presentation, it really is about bringing it together, bringing some of that year two teaching into year one so that you get all the content done. In year two, there is a 2-week assessment window in March, one in April, one in May, and one then in June. So effectively, if you're using the 2 weeks, you're missing 8 weeks of teaching. If you're better at getting it, if you've got a small number of students, you might get it done in a week each time, but that's still 4 weeks of teaching. It's important that students know that the course does not finish until mid-June. That is for year 12s, and year 12s, I'll explain, they need to go out in placement, and year 13s don't finish, or a lot of the courses in year 13 finish around mid-May. But with the year two, their assessment is actually a window between June 3rd and 14th this coming year. So they're not finished till then. So it's something that you need to instill in those that are on your course or starting your course. Do not go on holiday early. Okay, year one is general healthcare. And then year two is focusing on the occupational specialism. Now, people that are doing only one pathway, we are doing adult nursing, then it's fairly easy to bring in your year two teaching into your year one. For people that have got different specialisms, so that could be mental health or it could be children's nursing, then you will, during your year one, use examples that are appropriate for those settings. But it's still about bringing it in. Year one, you need a small amount of equipment, but not necessarily the whole setup. So you'll be looking at things like your blood pressure monitors and other aspects. Actually, as I go through, you'll be able to work out what those are. And then in year two, that's when you really need your hospital beds for sure. But as immersing year ones in the experience of year twos will only ever help their confidence and their understanding. So it's a good thing if you can do it. But I know for each school, it's different. Year one then is in your core A. You've got the rules, you've got the regulations, so your NMC code, your CQC, your laws, your safeguarding, your calibrating equipment, and then you've got the core B, which is the anatomy and physiology. Second year then, this is about knowledge that you're applying to skills. So that may be the steps to a bed bath, the steps to hoisting somebody from the bed into a chair. It may be correct procedures for clinical assessments such as blood pressure, oxygen sats, temp, pain, that sort of thing. It could be the process of patient risk assessment. So you may have a patient with dementia that gets confused, can be volatile and aggressive. So a risk assessment needs to be done for that. I'll explain more detail about the second year in a bit, but I am going to do a separate recording for that anyway. So this is a little bit more of a fly through so that you can understand how you bring some of the learning from second year into the first year. I'm going to start with placement hours because this is something that people are quite concerned about. And initially, when I started off, I thought, how am I going to get 16-year-olds observing nurses and be in the right place? Because I wouldn't want a 16-year-old observing me with a doctor or with a nurse. However, Lincolnshire Health Trust didn't play ball to start off with, but then we hit the right person. So it's a question of keeping going rather than thinking, I won't get any placements, it's never going to happen. Keep going, because you do get them in the end. Now, one of the things about this 315 hours, so it works out roughly 45 days, is you can tick off 35 of those hours in-house. So you might want to bring a guest speaker in. You could invite a dementia friend champion to give an information session. If you go online and you Google Dementia Friends Champion Information Session, you'll perhaps be able to get somebody come in for an hour to talk to your students about experiencing dementia. They're quite good. We've had that. You might want to have a guest speaker coming in from St John's Ambulance Cadets talking about volunteering, or somebody perhaps from the Royal Volunteering Service, that's the old WVRS, volunteering in hospitals. So it may simply be you've got a community nurse from your local GP that will come in, or a friend of a friend that's a midwife that will come in. So all those hours can be ticked off if you are having people in to talk to your students. Student CPD, such as if you get them completing a day's first aid course, a manual handling certificate course, if they're doing the care certificate, which is always a really good idea. All of these will help placements see that you're serious about your students, know what they're doing, and they can know and feel confident that they have got that information behind them. So all very handy things to do, and handy that it's ticking off 35 hours that you can tick off in that first year. You may organise a visit to the local university nursing department. We actually had our local university nursing department, the people that are actually accepting students onto the courses, they came and did a presentation for our students. They were the ones that were saying, we like them to have St John's Ambulance cadet experience. We like them to have worked in a care home where you haven't told them to. They've got off, they're off their own back, they've independently gone and done some volunteering, for instance. That's the sort of thing that they like to see. But bringing them in to talk to your students, try and clock up 35 hours of having in-house CPD, really, that's relevant, and then that will help with your ticking off numbers. Year one, I put a world there because in an ideal world, this would be great. But we all know that things don't actually go to plan within your own school. The the workplaces that the NCFE will agree to is going into a nursing home, into hospital wards. It says they're paramedics, but I'm not sure how you get a placement doing that. But you might have an over 18-year-old that can do that. Hospice, community nursing, so out there in the community, sidekick to a community nurse. GP practice. Now, we had students that went into our local GP practice. They pour in clinics such as the implant. They participated with the phlebotomy nurse. They did um, stock checks on things such as blood test tubes. They also they actually observed the cervical smear as well. So they were immersed into all that. If you can get them in the GP practice, that's fab. Assisted supporting living centres and then private hospitals. You may have a student that has a parent or an auntie that works in a particular workplace that will be useful. What you need to bear in mind is they can only have their 315 hours in 2 placements. So there's no good getting them a placement here, a placement there, which is what you could do with some of the older qualifications. They say 2 placements only. So it would be handy, again, ideal world, if one was in a GP surgery and one was in a hospital ward on a rotation. In addition, they can do their own volunteering, but that does not knock off those hours because unless that volunteering is actually in one of those work places that's bullet pointed there, then it won't count. However, it will enhance their learning big time. So that's a good thing to encourage them to do anyway. Ideally, after they sit the exam, so this year it is the 20th of June. Depending on where you are in the UK, you might have 2, 3, or 4 weeks after that you can do a block placement. So the average school finishes about July the 21st, and that gives you 4 weeks from there sitting that last exam to getting out in a block placement. Often this may be an avenue to take because in our school, the whole of the sixth form year 12s will go out on placements anywhere and everywhere the first couple of weeks in June, so that most of the sixth form placements are done and sorted before you would like the year 1 students to go out. Now, if they go out in that block placement, depending on how long it is, you can be ticking off some of those hours, so 105 to 140 depending on what you can get, really. I did have somebody ask me about what is the insurance if you're trying to get them to do some work in the summer holidays or in one of the half term. I've no idea. I'm assuming that's to do with your school and to do with the placements, to do with the insurance. I cannot answer that question, I'm afraid. So if you try and get rid of sort of 105, 140 hours plus the 35 hours of speakers and CPD, you are going to complete 170 hours-ish, which is half of the hours, and that would be great. For lots of reasons, that will be great, but they will become apparent a bit later on. So ideal world, that's what you want to do. Some people have got students that are in 4 days a week and then they have 1 day a week. If you can get the 1 day a week placements, that would be great as well. It really depends a bit on your placement, whether they want block or whether they're happy with 1 day a week. It's really up to what's happening in your area. I cannot give more advice on that. Bit of advice I can give. Dear student, do not book a holiday before the end of term. Your teacher. Year 11s and everybody else year 13s finish in May. And that's the 1 year courses of year 12 also finish sort of a late May, June. But this course runs to the end of the term, and it's important because that's when placements happen and that's when assessments are happening. It's a longer than average course, and I do think Students need to be aware of that, because there is always a temptation to get a cheaper holiday because you've gone a bit earlier. Well, that will really impact on what happens. So year 12 courses then finish in late May, but ours will finish with an exam on the 20th June. And if you can get those block placements, they won't finish till that last day, which would be great. So emphasize the point: no ducking out of school, even if it is a cheaper holiday. Just don't do it. Year 2 placements, the reason why I'm bringing this in a general one is because it does impact on what you might want to do in your year 1 and how you organise things. So ideally, a block placement in the first few weeks of coming back into year 2. That will give you time to focus on these newbie year 1s coming in at year 12. And it gets it out the way, because the second year assessment is in March, April, May and June. So you want to get placements all sorted by mid-March at the absolute latest, and they have got quite a few hours to clock up. So a block placement would be fab, and remember, you can only have 2 placements in the course of the year. See if you can get students out on placements to use their half term in October or February to clock at those hours. Now, you get students that are really willing and keen to do that, not sure what the insurance status is, and then you get students that like to work at McDonald's on the day that they are not in school, and they're never going to give up their half term. Just impress on them the importance of actually immersing yourself in this course if you want to get where you're going. 1 day a week placement stopping mid-March. So everything in year 2 should stop in March, mid-March, so they can get on with it and focus on the assessments. Right, getting placements. This is another area that causes a lot of anxiety, and it works different in different locations. So I've made a few suggestions. You've got steps into the NHS, which you may want to have a look at. Your local area should have a talent academy. Now, talent academies, they are supposed to be able to get placements for 14 and 15-year-olds in hospitals, allegedly. So if they can do that, they can do it for a 16-year-old. So worth trying to contact them. Sometimes they'll come in and do a talk as well, because they'll talk about what skills they need in a particular placement, which is handy, and tick off those 35 hours. What else is there? All right, now I'll come back to that actually. Let's do this one. So there is a bit on a website that's quite handy. It's a work experience toolkit for the NHS. Now, it is from 2015, but a lot of it is still relevant. Obviously, we've had a COVID pandemic since then. Have a look at that. And again, advice will be given in there. Above that is LinkedIn logo. Your school may have a LinkedIn account. If it hasn't, well, it would be a good idea if it did. LinkedIn is for employers, so employees seeking employment, but you can actually Google search, and you can actually follow particular hospitals, or see if you can find the placement officer in this particular hospital, because you can actually search. What you can do as well, or your school can do, is post an appeal for placements. It is the place to do it. It is social media, but it's to do with employers and employees, so it might be worth looking at that. If you want to tell the employees, the person that's possibly going to offer a placement, what you need them to do, this last bit here doesn't make sense to you, but it will make sense in a minute. Okay, there is a document on the NCF website that is called Supporting Healthcare Tutor Guidance 23-24. It's to do with the second year, but the second year is a lot of practical assessments, and there are things called CPAs, don't get confused, and OPAs, and they are basically what they need to be doing in the second year. So you could effectively copy and paste some of these to make yourself a work experience booklet, or use this information. Here's a CPA. undertake general or individual risk assessments in healthcare. So you can say to the placement, this is something that they need to be doing in the second year. It'd be really handy if they could observe somebody doing it, if they could take part in doing a risk assessment for somebody that loses a balance and may trip or fall. You could say they will have to, if they haven't already got their moving and handling certificate, which will be fab, they would have to then be observing, okay, the use of hoists, how a walking frame's used in a hospital ward, perhaps transfer sheets, transfer belts. So if you're talking to somebody who will perhaps take them on a placement, depending on what you want, it's good to know what you're talking about instead of going, well, they need to have a bit of experience. They need to talk to patients so that they, build their confidence, which is great. We want them to chat to patients, but we also want them to take part in a stock check to do with linen, to do with PPE. We want them serving drinks. We want them mopping floors. Okay. So audits, again, this is a CPA, don't worry about it. It's to do with the second year assessment. This is about auditing sharps boxes, clinical waste bins, okay? All of which you could be telling a placement person that actually I'd quite like them to do this. Would they get this opportunity? You've got other ones here then, wound dressing, bathing of the body and hair, toileting, using a hoist again. You've got promoting oral hygiene. So what you could do is you could look at that document, rip some stuff from it so that when you're talking about a placement to somebody that's potentially going to let a student join them, then you can be saying about what are the sort of things that you would like them to do, as well as serving teas and chatting to staff and building their confidence, talking to patients as well. Right, I've sent everybody the link to my first year delivery plan, but I'll explain how it works. So the green, by the way, I learn in tables and colours and tick lists. So that's what you're getting now. Core A, then, the content of which is delivered bit by bit then, as we do with an exam, and I put that all in the green column, and I've put the roughly the months that this needs to be taught. Core B then, slightly less time for Core B because of the content. You may get students very keen on Core B in anatomy and physiology because it's very nursey, and that you'll whip through that. But then Core A is a little bit duller, a little bit theoretical, rules and regulations. And then in my middle column, I've got the ESP, which is another cause of anxiety for people that are looking into doing the T-levels or currently doing the T-levels. And I only have 2 hours a week on that. The reason being is because I bring the learning from Core A and Core B into that ESP. So I don't need a separate 5 or 6 hours that takes the time from the other ones, okay? The ESP is an assessment that has an assessment window over 2 weeks. I'll explain it a bit more in a minute. It's about a case study person, but that case study may have a mental capacity assessment requirement. In Core A, you're teaching about mental capacity assessments. You then link that to a potential case study in ESP so that you can actually then show them and prompting them how it works. This is my suggestion for hours. It's up to you how you do it at all. Like I say, this is about 17 hours. You may be lucky enough to get more than that. But I've separated it in 9, 2 and 6, but it's entirely up to you. The resource that's my planning is all Word, so you can adjust it as you wish. This is an overview. Don't get too overwhelmed yet. Don't panic. This is an overview of that ESP, that pink column. What students have to do, and there is 6 tasks in all, although they're broken up into A's and B's. And I will look at now each one so that you can see how you can be drawing in that information. So don't panic about the fact there's a lot of information there. At the bottom, you can see of those, you can see 3 of those are recorded. So they're video recorded and that's sent off to the exam board. Everything else is also sent off to the exam board. So there's no requirement for you to do any marking in the year one, which is quite nice. The first task then is to do with researching. The students will be given 5 case studies to choose from. One may have Parkinson's, another may have had an accident and require rehabilitation, another may be, as it was in the May this year, it was I think she was mid-20s, learning disability, definitely cognitive issues, and was pregnant. Very excited about wanting a baby, but when you look into it, it's more about a doll and dressing a doll. Another one was about a young person that had a problem with alcohol. They'd come out the care system and they had dived into alcohol, and it's about researching about that. Research is about the condition. Research is about the health professionals that can be supporting that condition. But also what you need, and it's a little bit bizarre, what you need is numeracy as well as literacy in there. Right, so if I can just say how we link it all together. Okay, the students put together 4 pages of a report. They can have a 5th page that is all the references. So obviously you need to be teaching how students reference. They are putting together a healthcare plan. In this country, we do it in a certain way and we do it based on an initiative. So it could be an infection control rules. It could be if a person is likely to deteriorate and lose cognition. So if they have a condition such as dementia, the government initiative to do with that is advanced planning. Students will need to know all these different things in the background, a lot of which that's in core A. So they need to know about how to research. They need to know to go onto the ONS website to research particular statistics because they need the numeracy in there. They may find a graph that they think is relevant that they can screenshot and put in their core, their task 1. It may be how much money the UK spends on prescriptions for this particular condition. It may be research into the benefits of talking therapy when it comes to getting somebody to lessen the amount of alcohol or understand about the impact of alcohol. All sorts of things in the background that you will be teaching as you go along in Core A can be brought into this. They need to know. Oh, if I go back a minute. So in March time, in B125 and B126, there is content to do with epidemiology, okay, which is about research. So you could bring that earlier in if you wish, or you could leave it there as a bit of a refresher before they actually do the ESP in the May. You might have a case study person then who has eczema. Okay, serious eczema. So when you teach B2.25, for example, in January, you will be teaching them about skin conditions and eczema. Okay, when you teach them about eczema, then say, what if you had a case study of somebody with eczema? Who would be involved? What sort of diagnosis and treatment would there be? And grab their interest as you're going along, and it will help them then with the ESP. Lots of decisions are made in delivery of care based on laws again. So in Core A, you're going to teach about the Safeguarding of Vulnerable Groups Act. That's A 11.2, I think. Obviously, providing the care, having looked at the case study person and knowing you've got to do a healthcare plan, you may be referring to that to show you know what you're talking about it. In A8, you teach about the personalised agenda. in that task, you refer to that in it and how you're going to then use parts of that when you come to develop a care plan, a healthcare plan for your case study person. A good one to use is you can teach about make every contact count, the principles in A2.14. And that is about every professional, either in health or in social care or even informal carers, are all saying the same thing about lifestyle choices and about health education and risk. Make every contact count. So the GP will also talk about, if we're talking about the young person with alcohol, we'll talk about, you know, the impact of alcohol. The community nurse, if she's called out to see him, or the paramedic, or the social worker, for instance, all are saying the same thing, and the principle behind that comes from the make every contact count. So if they put like a few lines of that in their task 1 report, which you've taught them in core A 2.14, you are then helping bring it all together so it makes sense. So when they get that case study, it's like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. Advanced planning, so people that are possibly going to have a cognitive decline. I mentioned dementia. You're teaching that in A8.10. A8.1 is the mental capacity assessment. So the case study, which was a mid-20s, I think it was, girl who was pregnant, one of the things they needed to sort of assess was, okay, what was her capacity? Does she need a mental capacity assessment? And then showing their knowledge of what that is. But you're teaching that already in A8.1. So what you would do when you teach that is then give the example. In a case, the case study said this. Why do you need to do that? Why is that happening? Where do you find this information? Okay. Let's have a look. Health professional job roles. They are going to be putting together, the whole ESP is putting together a healthcare plan. So you can actually carry out research and just put in the health condition. It will take you to who's involved. So for instance, if you went to the MND or the Parkinson's Charity Support website, the charity's website, they can actually tell you, you know, it will include a neurologist. Involved will also be, and it will be speech therapist, whatever, and it will tell you, because the student are going to put together a healthcare plan and need to know who professionals are involved. When you're talking about that in core A, when you're talking about diagnosing in core B, you'll be then saying about these professionals to get them used to, okay, different health conditions, different social care surroundings and environments require different professionals. Research charities that support people. To give you a for instance, in the case of somebody who has special needs, an adult, there is MenCap. MenCap have got all sorts of advice. They actually even support people getting employment. They train advocates that can then work with somebody. So they need to know that sort of information. In some of your teaching, have a look at what charities there are out there, and generally, okay, if a person had this, what support they could get. If a person had Parkinson's, what support can they get? If a person has a learning difficulty as an adult, what support can they get? So you're bringing it in as you go along. Correct referencing, I'm sure you already do it. I use Neil's Toolbox, which is quite handy because it puts it all together for you. Non-profit making organisations, I think I might have skipped past that. The Health Foundation. The Health Foundation is about promoting health. If you have a little look at it, it's about infection control measures. If they've got some of that research in their task 1, again, it shows that broader understanding of what's happening. All good stuff. In the second task students have to do, it's about communication. So they've carried out all this research, they've found out all these people that will support their case study person, they found out why and how they should be supporting them. Now they need to interview the person. It's a 2.5-hour task, and you need to be recording it. There is a template for a witness statement for the teacher watching, but the other thing the teacher has to be is that case study person. So I think it might be a week in advance that we get the case study people. We need to really look at them, because this interaction, this one-to-one, is recorded. You cannot lead the student in any way down any little avenue, or they'll get into trouble, or you'll get into trouble for malpractice. So you immerse yourself into Zafia, who has a learning disability, and she's very excited about being pregnant, and she wants to look after and dress her in nice clothes, that sort of thing. Immerse yourself in that case study person so that you are able to answer questions. Students have 30 minutes to plan what they're going to say. So they might want to look at asking about the different physical, intellectual, emotional, looking at social needs to see whether they can extract that information before they write their healthcare plan. The interview is actually for 30 minutes. That's quite a length of time. And then they have 1 hour after consolidating it. So you'll be teaching them, firstly, to get used to them being recorded. What we do in our school is we run staff wellbeing clinics. Staff will have a timed slot in break time, or perhaps one of the periods of teaching, where they can come to your simulated hospital ward or your classroom, and they can have their observations taken. So their blood pressure, their oxygen sats, their temperature, breathing rates. We have a glucometer as well. They obviously consent to all of these. But the student will start off as if they are the nurse. So introduce themselves, say what their role is, check the name and the date of birth, all of which is needed in that task 2A. So you're taking the skills that they're learning as they go along in the year, and you're bringing it into what you need in your 2A. So you may want to do some work on building a rapport, talking about the traffic getting there, the waiting room, the weather at the moment, building that common ground, that rapport. They may want to, one of our students had a pretend leaflet in their interview. They described it, this is a leaflet that sort of explains to you what alcohol units are in different drinks. So I thought I'd let you have it just in case you wanted a little look at it, but I can talk it through, or you can talk it through with your sister or with your advocate, but you have that information, whether you can bin it if you want. So that's the sort of thing they're doing in their task 2A. It's important that they summarize at the end, check that person's understanding, and leave it as a positive, pleasant farewell. A couple of my students went, oh, okay, done. That's not what you're supposed to do at the end. So practicing those skills in what you are doing in core A. Now, if you have you have guest speakers coming in, like the community midwife, students need to plan what they're going to ask. They need to say, perhaps, so in the NMC Code of Practice, it says about delegating tasks. It says about scope of practice. It says about, and they should really plan their interview to extract information rather than sitting there and waiting for the community nurse to tell them all about the job. They should have some questions that will help them then build those skills that they will need in 2A. Should have some questions to ask that they've formulated, that they've thought about, in order to then support their learning in the second task, 2A, which is recorded. Okay, witness statement. I watched the recordings back to write the witness statement. You could get a second teacher if you've got lots of students. You may want somebody writing a witness statement as they are watching the recording. That takes 2 staff. We had the one at the time doing it. So it's a half-hour interview, and it's a professional discussion. They need to practice their communication skills, which they need to do on placements anyway, practicing how do they do an introduction, building a rapport, all that good stuff. The task 2B is about them writing the care plan for their case study person. They will have a pro forma to do that has different columns. They have 2 hours and 30 minutes to do this, and it's typed up. but they aren't allowed access to the internet, but they are allowed access to their task 1. They should have made some notes perhaps for their what the information they've got from their task 2A peer one-to-one interview, not peer, sorry, one-to-one interview. So they have to then say what the person's needs are, how they're going to approach doing this care plan, so holistically, personalised. This is where they might refer to make every contact count. They may refer to Maslow's, starting with the basics to make sure then they're done, and then moving up to how we're going to build their self-esteem, etc. Carl Rogers, that's a good approach as well. Safeguarding, obviously, that needs to be in there. Social learning, role model. So, for instance, if you have the young person with an alcohol addiction, you could be encouraging them to go to a local support group of people that are recovering alcoholics. It may be run by a role model who is a recovering alcoholic, and it's that role model. So you might want to include, or they might want to include, that sort of information in their healthcare plan. For those that are clinically trained, you know about the Roper-Logan theory. This is, for those of you not clinically trained, it's a nursing model about support or assessment and then supporting of daily activities for daily learning. Okay, so you might want to have a little go of that and touch on that. It isn't in Core A, it is actually part of the second year teaching, but you could bring it into Core A to help support that learning in the second year. They need to research all the different types of professionals. So what is their role, who's assessing, who's treating, who's looking at the long term, who's looking at any social care, what informal carers are involved, advocacy. So you need to be teaching that sort of stuff when you look at content in Core A. Next steps, that is the last thing on that healthcare plan. Where are they heading? What's the goals? They would have got that information from that case study, because it's about half a page-ish of information where they need to extract things that they then bring into this. Task 3A, it's recorded, however, they are not given any marks for this one. It is a peer review. So you put them in groups of 3 or 4. They then get time to read the other people's healthcare plan. So everybody takes a turn reading everybody's healthcare plan, making a few notes, and then they will have a conversation, a peer review of healthcare plans one at a time. So you will need to be teaching them about turn taking, including of everybody in a group situation, starting with praise and good points, then perhaps asking questions to see whether they can explain a point that maybe they haven't considered. There is a pro forma for the questions that they have been asked. So students fill in a pro forma, you fill in a pro forma, and this is recorded. Again, you can't do any prompts or anything like that. My students, because I'd been banging on about in task A about them needing to have good literacy and numeracy in there, they started to criticise each other on capital letters. It was supposed to be about the care plan and not actually the capital letters. So a question could be, do you think the advocate will need specialist training in dementia, in addiction, in mental illness? So practicing this prior to this ESP assessment in May can be brought in. You can perhaps set students different tasks to do a presentation. Okay, you do a presentation on risk assessment, the 5 stages, which is A 3.2. You do a presentation on the cardiac cycle, which is B 2.6. Right? Stand up in front, have your presentation, have it recorded, Do it all, look at your own recording, have feedback from your peers so that they are practicing those reviewing skills and evaluation skills as you go along. Okay, group communication skills. And again, templates and pro formas. They'll be on different forms everywhere, by the way. Okay, 3B then, the teacher changes from the role of the case study person into the role of a supervisor. This one is recorded. The student puts together a presentation of their healthcare plan, and they are presenting it to you, the supervisor, explaining why they've decided on this, why they thought this was a good idea, how this links to that, how this links to that. Okay, so they need to do that. They have got preparation time for it, and then the presentation can be up to half an hour, which needs recording. So half an hour is a lot of time. Okay, students need to perhaps look on YouTube about body language needed when you're delivering a presentation. You may want to teach them about animation on slides. If they have screenshot a graph in task 1, they can bring that into the presentation, because they're not allowed access to the internet. So whatever they've got in that task 1, they can then refer to. So that might be something they want to consider as well. Students need to present their healthcare plan and should have taken on board everything from task 1 through to task 3A. Presentation using PowerPoint. It does say at some point you can use a flip chart, but probably not going to be meeting the standards that they're expecting for digital as one of the core skills. So not sure why that's in there, but hey ho. A supervisor can clarify some points if they've stumbled through something, but again, no leading questions. Last one, evaluating how well they've done in task 1, task 2A, task B, task 3A, task 3B. Task 4 is evaluating all these. I bring this to your attention now because in September, when they start, you need to teach the Gibbs reflective cycle of reflection and reflective practice and use a weekly reflective journal. They are practicing those skills right from the beginning. They can evaluate their presentation that they did. They can evaluate how well they did in their test. They can evaluate how well they did when they were in the staff wellbeing clinic. Now, I have uploaded onto TES my reflective journal. I printed it all off. I had it ring bound, or have it ring bound, and a plastic cover on top. On TES, there's different sections that you put together and then page number all the way through. But depending on what you want in there, there are different sections. So to start off with, the first reflective journal I have for year 12s, I have a section that is about reviewing their attendance, their punctuality, how prepared they were to work, whether they're wearing the right uniform, aspects like that, to start off with the five or 6 weeks of doing that. So they're actually reviewing themselves as a student. And if you teach the Gibbs reflective cycle, it will have these different stages and different look at SMART targets. So practicing that straight away. There is another section that you can put in your reflective journal, which is reflecting on general tasks, presentation, a recording that they've done with a friend. It might even have been on a Saturday they've done it, but they reflect on it to see how they can improve. There are hints and examples in the reflective journal about how they can do it. So for instance, timekeeping, set your alarm clock earlier, catch an earlier bus, impress on your parent if they're dropping you off, the need to get there earlier, things like that. So Google search T-Level Health Reflective Journal. It's free on TES, and then work out how you want to put that together and use it from the beginning. You can role model reflection. You do a presentation, you get their feedback, you reflect on it, you share that with them, bringing in that information in core A and core B in your delivery and making it a habit, making it the norm. Nursing is about reflective practice, and they definitely need that in the second year as well. They need it, of course, in that task 4. So this is an overview again. Don't worry too much about it all, because I'm going to do a separate CPD, if enough people are interested in it, on just the ESP, and I will go through hints and tips and how you're supposed to do it. There's quite a few pro formas in it. So that is the reason why your ESP on my plan is only for 2 hours, and your core A and core B for much more time, but you're bringing in that learning. Moving on, actually. Now, there are lots of resources that I have made and I have put on TES. The reason I put them on TES is that I can put 6 or 7 documents together in one place. On the Facebook group, I'm uploading one document and then I upload another document, and they don't always tie in. So I put them onto TES, so you've got them all together. You can download them together. So there is a T-level core A student introductory book. There is a core B introductory book, and that's got 2 5-star reviews. If you look, there are people that are downloading a lot of these resources, quite a lot of these resources, and they never leave a review. So then I get people asking me, so what are they? Are they good enough? And all that. So well, it would be really handy if people that do down them have a review for me, and for other teachers, not particularly for me. So you have got the Adult Nursing Reflective Journal. There you go, 10,000 downloads of the different documents in there. Hang on, how many reviews? Let's just go back a minute and look at reviews. Oh, forget it. Right, the second year, so people that are in the starting the second year or are at the beginning of everything, there is a scheme of work that I've done. I've done a scheme of work, by the way, for Core B and Core A, and they're in the student introductory booklet package as well. So I've done the scheme of work for the second year. It may be worth having a little look at it when you're teaching the first year. So again, you are looking at aspects of what you need to teach, and you can bring those in. So by the way, all these resources are Word documents or PowerPoints that you can adapt to suit your own need, to suit anything that you like. You can adapt it. There is some stuff on TES that is the old spec, because there are resits in November coming up. So I've left them on there, but they are clearly labelled old spec. I have a transition pack, which loads of people downloaded and didn't leave a review. That was for year 11s. So during the summer holidays, they were looking at preparation work. We've got such keen year 12s. They did loads, bless them. There is a T-level health induction activities. So for the first week, we had a lot of induction activities. We did their DBS, and we looked at booking them in to do first aid, etc. If you're doing an open day, there are promotional resources as well. I did get a 5-star review on that one, look. So you may want to have a little look around and a search. Going back to where I started from, year 1, 495 guided learning hours. Okay, quite a bit of things are being recorded in assessments, so practice them being recorded. Year 2, 570. So you need to be bringing in year 2 learning into year 1, particularly as the assessments take up quite a lot of time. If you are teaching, for instance, osmoregulation and urine production, you may want to do an interesting practical with your year 12s about catheters and urine hydration charts. If you're teaching about cardiovascular, you could then use a practical about blood pressure, oxygen sats. If you're teaching about the digestive system, you can look at using the Bristol stool chart and why certain medications or certain conditions will change stool. If you're teaching about the endocrine system, look at diabetes. Perhaps you can do a practical on using a glucometer. If you're learning about microbes, linking it to hand washing, putting on your PPE gloves, don, and taking them off. Doff correctly, so PPE correct, on and off of your gloves, linking it to the microbes again. Personal hygiene, microbes, you might want to take them through the bed bath stages, raising the bread up high, starting at top to bottom. There's lots of information about that, and that brings in that second year learning as well. You may be talking about different laws and regulations, and then actually teach them moving and handling, using a hoist, moving one of each other, or your mannequin from the bed onto a chair, from the chair onto the toilet, whatever it is, keeping it exciting stuff. Year 2 learning into year 1. Okay, so practicals, fun stuff, keep them going. So we had students writing the location of organs on a Hansat suit. We did challenges, weekend challenges, Monday morning. Can you name all the colour bins for what waste is supposed to be in it? Staff wellbeing clinics. I was a little bit annoyed that they kept their cardigans and a hoodie on, because that's what they were told not to do. Shame that's in that photograph. How not to do it. Cleaning rota. So if you have your simulated wards set up, then you need to perhaps have a rota about teaching them how to clean and mop. If anybody has used with their year 10s and 11s the Stacey Dooley 9 to 5 in a care home documentary, it was hilarious that there was like a 16, 17-year-old who splodged the mop around because nobody had ever showed her how to mop. She'd never seen anybody mopping. So techniques on infection control, which is needed in the second year, can be taught and be a little bit more interactive in your first year, because sometimes Core B is a little bit heavy going. Having interesting nursey stuff as competitions, as starters. So research the name of where the pulse points are. You could use Chocolate Angel Delight. You could use brown plasticine. You could make some gloopy stuff up like my grandchildren quite like, slime. And you could have students then making their own Bristol stool chart. Still relevant, still something that's used in the second year, a little bit of fun. You may want to get some yellow, orange and brown food colours and some tubes, and see if students can match the hydration colour on the chart. This may be again when you're teaching about urine production, when you're looking at the renal system. There's always fun ways of looking at the organelles in a cell, pizzas, cakes, melon, setting things in jelly. So the cytoplasm is the jelly. Have a look on Google Images. There's some great stuff out there. I have got on TES, free again, a sweet, making neurons with sweets. And if the students were able to label and say the purpose of that bit of the structure, they were able to eat the sweets. So Google search structure of a neuron, fun activity, and the passage of a nerve, and that will pop up. I put there the Instagram QR there because I am putting things like this onto Instagram. When something pops in my head, I stick it on Instagram like that. So you may not have an account and you may not know what I'm talking about, and actually I don't use Instagram for any other reason, but that's what I'm doing, just to let you know, really. Right, in the second year I'm going to briefly go over the assessments, just because if you're aware of it, you're more aware of what you can be bringing into the first year and into the ESP. So the first task is an assignment, and it's marked by the NCFE, and it's about case studies, and it's about applying the knowledge of nursing into practical assignments. Tasks 2 and 3 are a role play, and the teacher is observing that. They are literally working with a patient, the patient being a mannequin. Task 3 then is the teacher being the mentor and the student being a trainee nurse. So they're asking questions about when have you used your skills in, and it's, I'll go through it in a minute, and it's an assessment like that. So that's just an overview. Now this finishes on June the 14th. So impress on them again. Don't go on holiday when all your friends that are in year 13 are going on holiday to Ibiza, because you are still going to be part of this assessment. An overview, don't get too overwhelmed. An overview is that one assignment then takes up March, or 2 weeks in March. You then, of course, got a Easter break in there, and then the 2 weeks in April, and then you've got a half term at the end of May and 2 weeks in May. So this assessment is taking out quite a bit of time of teaching. 3 lots of recording at the bottom there in yellow, recorded, 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 and the middle 2 are assessed by the teacher and will be moderated by the exam board. Can I draw your attention to task 4? No, task 3, no, assignment 3, and what it says above. It says in blue, from September, students must experience different simulated and work experience situation, building a reflective portfolio to refer to in their Occupational Specialism Assessment Assignment 3. Top part there, access to reflective account portfolio. In this assessment, in the second year, the last one in June, it is about drawing on all their knowledge of the 2 years, their reflection. This is why the reflective journal is important. Reflection is in the ESP, getting them to review and evaluate how well they're doing all the way along will hopefully also bring improvements. Don't be overwhelmed by that. I will do separate CPD on this. Okay, remember, going back a few slides ago, well, actually quite a few slides ago, I was saying how your people that you are trying to persuade them to have your students as a placement, this document. And this document is the CPAs and the OPAs of what they're going to be assessed on in the second year. So when you're preparing them, that is what you're preparing them for this second year. So they will need to know about the urine hydration, the Bristol stool chart, how to carry out a risk assessment, bed bathing, moving and handling, okay. What else can I say? I've gone on about that a bit too much. So just a brief overview, because I am rattling on here. March, it's similar to an ESP. It's case study people, and they are working through assignments. Task 4 is evaluation, the importance of reflection and evaluation. April then is students are carrying out demonstrations. They have between sort of 15 and 25 minutes. They will have a case study that tells them how long they've got. They've got 5 minutes to prepare, and then they are standing next to a hospital bed with a responsive or non-responsive mannequin, and they have to carry out tasks. It is being videoed. They then will move to the next bed or to the next whatever it is they're being assessed on, and they will carry it out, and it will be a continuous recording from one to the other with a short break for 5 minutes in between time. I put there may have a floor plan. So one of the assessments could be hoisting somebody from bed into a wheelchair, for example. So the teachers will get these assessments a week beforehand. They will set up what they call the station where that student is going to be assessed as it's supposed to. So it may be they need to have this form, this form, and this form. They need to have access to a bowl of water to be able to do the bed bath. They need to have the chair moved away from there so they can hoist. All that information will be given to you, but the purpose of telling you now is to say about how you are bringing in the information from year 1 delivery into how you're going to do this. Some people have got very sophisticated hospital beds, some people not so much. I was asked a question about how much money. I have no idea how much money. Um, uh, I just don't know because I was involved in um, designing a hospital ward because um, our CEO of the Academy Trust is quite good for bidding for money, and he got quite a lot of money for a T-level building. We then had this hospital ward, which I needed to design. So it's got a sluice room, it's got a little kitchen for assistive living, it's got the 3 hospital beds, storage rooms. We've got mannequins everywhere. But I don't know how much money you can get. I don't know how you bid for it. This is not my area of expertise. Right. So for the assessment, you'll get, I think this might be the March one then, 4 case studies and 4 task stations. They carry out a practical in one station, then move to the next and then the next. They give 5 minutes to familiarise themselves with the equipment, and they get the allocation on that case study, how much time you're spending to do that. Okay, so practical activity could be absolutely anything to test a CPA or an OPA. They've done it, they move on. Another practical, it could be a tabletop exercise, because in the core A there is about calibrating equipment. That's a 7.7. It could be about some sort of auditing or infection control stuff. So it's not necessarily moving from bed to bed, it's moving from station to station. They complete that one, then they go on to the next one, and then the final one, all of which is being videoed. All of this they need to be reviewing and get into the habit of reviewing. Moving on. May is very similar to what I've just shown you. One of them is more of a healthcare, one of them is more of the specialism, such as the nursing. So this is the nursing practical, again, going from one activity to a next, one station to a next. And the teacher will mark those, and it is recorded. The recording and the marks should be available for moderation. Back to the very last bit. You're probably a bit bored of listening to me now. The last one, as I pointed out, they need to refer to a reflective portfolio. So if you think of the OPAs and the CPAs, they are being tested on that. So they need to reflect on different areas. To give you this example then, so there is a theme. Without teaching the whole of the second year assessment, what you need to know is part A and part B there. So 12 marks. You, the supervisor, will say, referring to your own practice, discuss a time when, and then it will be the theme. So safeguarding was required. There was a duty of candour where you had to apologise. If you don't know what duty of candour is, you need to look that up. That's a second year thing. You need to, how it's dealt with, what's the disciplinary action, how is it handled. Part B, then you've got the explain how the code of conduct knowledge is essential when, and then you'll get this theme. So they need to have, in the second year, be building this portfolio that is well organised so they can refer to bits when they're asked questions. This is recorded and it lasts an hour. There are 3 different themes and there are 6 questions. So an hour of them talking about how they reflect on their own learning, what have they learned, what areas can they improve on, etc. So getting that reflective journal sorted at the beginning of year 12, making it a habit, making sure they're doing it properly and in depth, making sure they're learning from those at the end when they're saying what I'm going to do differently, is important in the whole of the qualification. Thinking ahead, last bit, I will stop talking in a minute. Each topic you teach in core A or core P or core B, you can give examples of a person that they may encounter in their case study, their ESP. So it could be a particular medical condition that you're talking about in core B. It could be aspects of them needing to change lifestyle choices that they're making. It could be about the mental capacity. It could be about safeguarding. It could be about make suring the Equality Act has been maintained. Reflective practice, make it a habit. Make infection control a habit. So it says there no hand washing. That's clearly not what I'm supposed to have there. Hand washing, if you have a simulated ward, get them to hand wash before they actually go in or when they are in there. At the start of a lesson, wash your hands. At the end of the lesson, wash your hands. If they're set a task to do something, in between touching one mannequin to the next mannequin, wash your hands. Hair out the way, don't have rings on, etc. Take off those nails, they look ridiculous. Plan how to record and talk to your IT department about compressing videos. The reason I've ended on that is because that is where I fell foul. Myself and my colleague Tola, we had asked the whole T-level team that were teaching business, they were teaching digital IT. We had asked for recording equipment that was capable of doing the recording that we needed. As a shortcut, they gave us little video recorders on a stand. The battery life was about 10 minutes. You have to record for half an hour. The recording switched off after 15 minutes and then started again. So the student had to be stopped and then started again, even if they're in the middle of a flow of a conversation. Then when we squished them down to MP4s, we tried to upload them because you have a limited time to upload all your evidence, and they still wouldn't upload. So then we had to go back to the IT department and they squished it into an M4V. Means and then we will be able to upload them. What you need to do in advance in all your recording of students and getting them to reflect is practice that. Make sure you get that. The ESP 2 weeks is a little bit frantic. You're playing the role of a case study, you're writing witness statements, you're organising student A this time, student B this time, student C this time, to making sure they have all the times of when they're doing things. What you don't need to do is stress about recording. It's a good idea to, if possible, do a little bit of work experience placement observation yourself. Have a look what YouTube says about bed baths. Have a look at all information to do with what students will be actually performing in terms of skills, demonstrating their skills at a later date. We have the Facebook groups, which is where most of you have found this information about the CPD. There is the Health and Social Care Resources, which I'm the admin on. I am, by the way, the only admin on. I vet every person that joins. I make sure that I vet any posts before they're released, but sometimes I can't keep on top of comments, lots of comments, and sometimes I miss things that people need to tell me about. I do my best to support, but it's actually quite a long task. So I usually get 5 or 6 emails a day, 5 or 6 messages a day. I get messages on Instagram. I even get messages on LinkedIn, and there's a limit to how much I can do at the speed I would like to do it. Bear with. So there's the Instagram QRs. There is a WhatsApp group for people doing the T-level health. I'm not an admin person on it. I don't think I know how to add a person on it either. But I know people on the T-level health group, so that bottom Facebook group probably do know because I think they've set it up. I put the logo there for LinkedIn because that's also good. I've put the logo there for Twitter, that's X. Now I have got an account and I have no idea how I use it. I just follow comedians and the BBC News. Other people may have a better idea and get information like the latest information on BBC Health News. Now, my students recommend this app. It's for students who are revising. So they upload their mind map, their revision ideas, and other students look at that and they upload theirs. So it's like group revision through the app. And my students recommend it, so I'm passing that information on. Obviously, I'm not a student and I don't know. If anyone has any other ideas, share them on the Facebook groups. Let me know and I will share them. We're in it together. We are a team of teachers that have the same issues as everybody else. So let's support each other. Thank you for listening to my recording. I hope you got a lot out of it. No doubt you'll still probably have questions. I may not be the person to answer them. So I'm going to sign off and say bye because it's tea time. Okay, thank you.